We've seen 484 penalties through the first 2 weeks of the season, and that's the most since 2015's first 2 weeks, and we still have a game tonight. And I don't know, again, if this is more of the preseason non-existing anymore, and thus officials are still getting into it. They're still working stuff out, or the points of emphasis that would normally be made on the game with the clear emphasis on offensive holding. Clearly, there's an offensive holding point of emphasis. Just in last year, there were first 2 weeks, there was a clear emphasis on roughing the passer that then suddenly disintegrated after Tony Correnti's dreadful call cost the Packers a win against the Vikings. So, to have all of that happen in the first 2 weeks of the season, again, I do not know if it is the preseason and the points of emphasis that normally regulars would have an idea about going into the regular season that they don't now because they don't play in the preseason. I don't know. But the roughing the passer call that happened in Denver on Bradley Chubb was dreadful. I think what was happening there, if I can interpret it, is the official thought that Chubb landed his entire body weight on top of Trubisky. That extra 15 yards clearly helped the Bears win that football game or get in position for Trubisky to make the play with 1 second left and call a timeout to set up Eddie Pinheiro, or Eddie Dinero, as he's being referred to in Chicago now because he's so money all of a sudden, making a kick that Matt Nagy wouldn't have dared allow him to take and didn't in week 1 against the Packers. Remember that? He turned down a 50-yarder to go for it on 4th and a million?
Yeah.
Well, this one he had no choice but to leave it in the hands of Eddie Dinero. He was money. Big Bears win. And that was a dreadful call. And we have, and I know I said it in my 4 downs last week, and I even mentioned it on game day morning yesterday, and I knew I was so-called punching the clown, as they say, how pass interference being reviewed was a non-story. We saw 2 instances yesterday. One was a first, okay? One was not, where Pete Carroll threw a challenge flag on a non-call in Pittsburgh and got the call. And again, the fact that the officials thought it was clear and obvious on review, the problem is for fans is if that's clear and obvious, well, I thought 5 other times where you wouldn't overturn or put a flag down on the field through replay, a yellow flag on the field through replay. I thought it was clear and obvious, and you thought it wasn't. So it's confusing to fans what is clear and obvious to understand whether a coach is going to have a challenge proven correct or not. It's confusing to fans. And then we saw the first instance of a scoring play being reviewed, because every scoring play is reviewed, and thus everything that's reviewable under review can be reviewed and overturned or a flag put on the field for it. A scoring play for the Vikings removed, taken off the board because Dalvin Cook was called for offensive pass interference. And I saw on NBC last night, they kept hitting that over and over again. I personally, again, I'm waiting for this. I could be wrong. What NBC kept pointing out, I don't think is what Dalvin Cook was called for the penalty. He was shoving a defender out of the way as the ball was in the air to Diggs for the score. Diggs wasn't called for it. It was on Dalvin Cook for hitting somebody before the ball was in the air or shoving somebody away before he's allowed to in the end zone. It wasn't the initial contact. It was after that he was shoving another defender out of the way. I can't wait to hear what the NFL's response to that is, because that was huge. Taking 7 off, they eventually only got 3. And this is not what this was intended for.
No.
Not at all. Not at all. It was intended to prevent the disastrous non-call from happening. And, of course, the Saints replay the Rams again, and a refereeing decision hosed them. I mean, I couldn't believe that as I'm sitting there. All that said, obviously, Breeze going out changed the tenor of that game, and the Rams did what they had to do. They did.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live, or download The Rich Eisen Show app.